And good evening, I'm Jeff Lyons. It is 9 o'clock here tonight. Time for the 14 First Alert Weather Show at 9, sponsored by Audubon Chrysler Center. We have First Alert weather days now extending through Sunday. We're expecting that extreme heat to stay with us. That'll put our heat index into the triple digits easily over the weekend as we get some of the hottest temperatures we've had so far. And then another concern, and really more pressing here for tomorrow, will be scattered severe weather, at least possible over the tri-state. I don't know if you were out this evening. I happened to be out here just a few minutes ago on the way back into the station, and those big thunderstorms to our east that triggered severe thunderstorm warnings in Du Bois and Perry counties kicked out an incredible outflow boundary, cool air, and all of a sudden the wind picked up from the east and the temperature dropped by about 5 to 7 degrees and all the humidity disappeared, at least temporarily. That outflow boundary, though, will play into our weather story for tomorrow, because where that thing ultimately lands, and it's pretty much right over the middle of the tri-state, that will likely be the focus for some thunderstorm development tomorrow during the afternoon and evening. And that's the first thing we're tracking, is the potential for some severe thunderstorms with damaging winds tomorrow afternoon and evening. Now, at the end of the weekend, going into next week, it looks like some rain will move in, and then cooler temperatures relative to what we've had. We're still talking upper 80s to bring that heat wave under control next week. The heat advisories are widespread now all the way down into the Gulf states, eastern, all of Missouri there, western Tennessee, western Kentucky, southern Indiana, and of course southwest Indiana here in the tri-state. Our peak heat index forecast is now updated, and no change from what I showed you earlier. We're still looking at maximum values up around 110 or maybe even warmer than that. This line of storms that really occupied much of the day originated up here by Rockford, Illinois, and moved through Chicago. A lot of widespread damage there. Valparaiso up here in the region showing some damage, and then it came all the way down. In fact, if we look just at damage reports, I'm just going to put them all on here right now, and you're going to see a whole bunch all clustered in that same area. If we filter out just for wind, this will be at least a little more illustrative of what we had here today. Let me try to get that in there, and it didn't take many down. These are wind damage reports and then actual wind reports with that line that came through. 63-mile-per-hour winds there at Lafayette in Tippecanoe County. Over here closer to Cincinnati, we had 45 to 50-mile-an-hour winds, and back toward Rockford we had 75-mile-per-hour winds. There were a couple of 80-pluses in there. I probably won't be able to find them here. There's 91 at Kankakee. So you can see that we had a widespread and long tracked damaging wind event, or a derecho. It will probably be classified as one once all the damage reports come in and the Weather Service is able to do some checking on that. But if it was on the ground or causing continuous damage over 400 miles and at least 150 miles wide, then yeah, you're looking at derecho. For tomorrow, our threat elevates to level 2 on a scale of 5. For some severe thunderstorms in the afternoon and evening. We may have lingering storms into Thursday, so we have a level 1 risk basically for southern Indiana and Illinois, and that takes into account further development of thunderstorms from the original line. This is how the HRRR model, or the high resolution rapid refresh, is resolving the weather problem for tomorrow, and it brings a line of storms into the tri-state around 5 p.m. that then races through. That's where we would have the damaging wind and possible spin-up tornado threat through the overnight hours, maybe a few additional showers and storms before we quiet things down on Thursday. And then we get hot again. Even though we get a slight break Friday up to 92, we're looking at potentially 98, or the hottest day of 2026 so far, on Sunday. So, it's going to be a long slog here to get through all the heat. And we've had smoke too. If you noticed that earlier today, the sky was kind of that buff gray color from not only cloud cover, but also the smoke aloft from those Canadian wildfires. With tomorrow's storm chance, you would think it would wash some of that out, and it will, but we still have some lingering smoke in the region. Right now, our temperature has dropped from a high today of 96. We are now down to 77. The dew point came down to 67. It was around 77 this afternoon. So that's the effect of that outflow boundary coming across the tri-state. You see low 70s right now, Huntingburg, Dundee, and low 80s out here in Sturgis, Fairfield, where that outflow has not reached yet to bring in the cooler temps. So consequently, we still have feels like temps in the 90s there and comfortable lower 70s with the impact of that rain-cooled air sweeping across the tri-state. 78 was the low this morning and 96 was the high this afternoon. We are still looking for meaningful rainfall over a widespread area. Haven't had much of that this month other than the first Saturday of the month. We've not picked up any significant rainfall, so we're behind by about 3/4 of an inch. Commuting tomorrow will be fine in the morning, but in the afternoon you may be dodging some of those big thunderstorms after 5 p.m. So just keep that in mind for that evening commute. Maybe you're heading out to practices or games or whatever. There will likely be some thunderstorms showing on the radar at that point. Good idea to have the First Alert Weather app so you can kind of track and check as you go. And that's really the active weather corridor from about Chicago all the way down to Charlotte, North Carolina. The wider hour by hour shows that band of storms developing and then pushing down our way by tomorrow afternoon and evening, and that's when we anticipate the greatest severe risk. We may have some thunderstorms leading up to that, but the organized line is what we really are worried about the most for a damaging wind threat. And then on the GFS going into the weekend, we lose the rain chances and get the heat back. No turning back from 98 on Sunday before we finally break the heat wave early next week. Now, the GFS isn't going to be able to capture locally heavy rainfall with that line tomorrow, but you could see an inch of rain in a very short period of time in some spots as those storms track through. The European model is also, of course, wet for tomorrow evening, and then it wants to bring additional thunderstorms scattered through on Thursday. Friday, Saturday mainly dry, and we get into next week then with perhaps a chance for rain. And the European model is also advertising some decent rainfall for some, maybe a half an inch to 3/4 on average. But again, those thunderstorms will tip the average and could put down an inch or more of rain while your neighbor gets nothing. 75 tonight, partly cloudy, 94 tomorrow, scattered thunderstorms in the evening, damaging wind threat. And then the First Alert Weather days, we have a whole string of them now going to Sunday. Next week, we start to pull back a little bit, although these numbers have come up again. They were in the upper 80s there this afternoon. So as the forecast updates, those numbers will fluctuate. And then the temperature outlook through the 25th of August keeps us warmer than normal and drier than normal across the tri-state. Our pet pick tonight, Kiki. That's a big cat. And would also work to keep a draft coming from under your door there if you can get Kiki to lay in the right spot. All right, let's check your questions and comments here. Get my phone going. All right, let's see who we have here. Charlotte Todd, we need some rain. We do, Charlotte. We're working on that. Hopefully tomorrow you'll get your wish. James Williamson, what's holding the heat over us even with all the wind and storms today? Well, nothing was once that outflow boundary came through, but prior to that, there was nothing to nudge it out of the way unless you were under those storms. Amy Elsner, on my bucket list dream trip. First flight out of Indy was canceled for storms. I'm now in Chicago waiting for connection. For Europe, hoping I'll be on time for the solar eclipse. Oh, that's right, there's a big eclipse tomorrow. Oh, well, shoot. Well, Amy, take good pictures. I'm confident you're going to make it. I hope you make it. Bill Vowles, any more chances for rain for Owensboro tonight? I don't think so. We're pretty much done with the rain for now, but I think we at least have a fighting chance for some meaningful rain tomorrow in Owensboro. Darlene Zell, do I think we may have a dry fall? Yeah, if the going trend continues, it wouldn't surprise me to see a warm and dry fall. Plus we have El Nino swinging in on a chandelier. Angie Wampler wants to go camping this weekend. It's going to be hot. You will stick to your sleeping bag. Let's see, Becky Demon, I bet that's Demon. Is it only storms? Yes. Linda Poston, Northern Indiana hit hard. Yeah, we just talked about that. So, and again, that's how these things can work. Once the derecho gets going, all bets are off. JD Rapp, will there be an upgrade to a level 3 tomorrow? Not sure on that. Probably not, but you never know. Ryan Nance kept the shout outs minimal recently. Big shout out for Adam. Meemaw was able to buy him a new SUV. Way to go, Meemaw. Raiding the cookie jar there. Zach Seats, Evans will be upgraded to 3 of 5. Like I said to JD, it's possible, but don't focus so much on those risk numbers. I mean, if it turns out that we're at level 3 but we weren't upgraded, treat it like level 3. The Storm Prediction Center is pretty skillful at these severe weather outlooks, but they are just that. They are outlooks based on what is expected, and if the unexpected happens, sometimes you can get far stronger storms than you would have anticipated, say with a level 2 or 1. I mean, I've seen tornadoes happen in a level 1 risk. I promised last night we would talk a little bit about dew point, relative humidity, the heat index, measuring it, the impact on your body and things like that. And one thing I mentioned last night was wet bulb globe temperature, which is kind of the new standard to measure the impacts of heat and other factors on your body. And you might have seen this device or one similar to it being used on sidelines at sporting events. And it works a little differently than just a thermometer or what we call a sling psychrometer, which basically tells you the dew point and the temperature. What this does is it, first of all, it takes the temperature, and this black globe up here, that's where the globe comes from, it absorbs heat right from the sun. And so the wet bulb globe temperature is thought to be a lot more accurate in describing how the weather feels to and how it affects your body, because it takes into account wind, your latitude, the elevation of the sun, and then of course the dew point, relative humidity, temperature, and incoming sunlight. And so by measuring a lot more parameters, it then is a better way to determine the heat stress on the body, and it measures the maximum cooling that is possible through sweat evaporation. And that's key, because there's a point where your sweat is either not evaporating or not evaporating quickly enough to meaningfully cool your body, and that's when your core temperature would rise and put you at risk. And so the wet bulb globe temperature has a much different looking set of parameters here and things that you should do. Now the heat index, it basically is moderate, high, dangerous, things like that, very basic. But wet bulb globe temperature, for instance, if that temperature comes up at 80 to 85, and again, this is the derived temperature, that's not just the air temperature, then it prescribes a 15-minute rest per hour of activity and drinking 16 ounces of liquid per hour. Same thing for moderate. You get into the high where the numbers there are at 88 to 90, and now you need at least 30 to 40 minutes of rest or non-activity per hour that you're out, and more water, of course, 28 ounces for that, 32 at the extreme. I took the wet bulb globe temperature at 5 p.m. today, and it came in at 87. The heat index at that time was 105 here at the station. It was 109 in Owensboro. So at that level, which is a moderate risk on the wet bulb globe temperature, you would expect to only get about 30 minutes of activity in per hour, and you would need to replenish at least 16 ounces of liquid water per hour. So that's the difference there, and you see the peak heat index forecast through Friday up in that same range. Now, the wet bulb globe temperature is measured in position, wherever you happen to be. This is a more general look at the heat index, just taking temperature and dew point and integrating them in an equation to come up with the heat index. And of course, on the output side of it, what does it do to your body? Well, there are many symptoms that come with heat exhaustion and heat stroke, and the best way I like to describe it is if you are experiencing anything on this side of the screen, you still have time to take action. Get into the cool, drink some liquid, take a rest. If you don't, then you advance over here into heat stroke, and this is much harder to reverse once it's ongoing, and that's why it's a medical emergency. So it's much better to be proactive and just not do stuff out there when it's really hot, or if you must, monitor for those symptoms, stay hydrated, take frequent breaks. As you saw in the wet bulb globe temperature, at least a half an hour breaks per hour. Doesn't mean it has to be a 30-minute block. You could work 10, not work 10, etc. Whatever is the best solution for you. If heat stroke symptoms arrive, though, then you got to call 911, get an ambulance, get some medical attention, because it is a medical emergency. A few more comments here. Amy promises good picture of the eclipse. Tell me where you're going to see the eclipse if you're still watching. I'm wondering, so if you're on an international flight, you're at O'Hare. I'm sure they were shut down at some point today when that derecho came through. Justin Turnage, and that's probably why things are backed up there. Justin Turnage, we like the weather wall. Yeah, we do too. I mean, it's the best way, and you get the full screen here so I can show you stuff. Yeah. Do I think the tornado threat will increase? Chloe Hedge. Hard to say. This isn't really a tornado scenario. It's more damaging winds. Within that, you could have a tornado or two, but we're not looking at like supercells and long track kind of stuff. How long to fall of the year? September 21st is the equinox, the autumnal equinox, which would be astronomically the first day of fall. Typically, we're starting to experience some fall conditions before then, and certainly after. Somebody had their windows open. Brenda Beeman says it's too hot in Owensboro to open windows. Yeah. Justin Turnage, outflows producing crazy awesome shelf clouds to the north. Yeah, it doesn't surprise me. Lenny Howard opened his windows in Whitesville to the cool breeze. All right. Tara McDaniel wants to know, will it be bad during the morning in Evansville? We don't think so, Tara. There could be a thunderstorm or two, but we think that the afternoon and evening will be the prime time for severe weather, if we get any. Okay, and let's see, who's here tomorrow? Byron is here tomorrow. He'll tell you about that on 14 News Sunrise, and I'll have an updated forecast for you tonight on 14 News at 10, so stay safe. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you at 10 o'clock.